So let's take a break from the absolute dumpster fire that is the Shadows of Change launch to talk about something else also Warhammer related, Realms of Ruin from Frontier. Recently, I was able to play their campaign preview event where we got to play 2 story missions from the campaign mode and go up against the latest faction to be announced, the Nighthaunt. So, how was the game looking? Was it fun? And were the missions any good? Let's go through both of them and find out. By the way, huge thanks to Frontier for inviting me to this event. Love you guys. So, the first mission was against the Uruk Kruleboyz and saw Sigrun leading the Stormcast into Uruk territory in search of an initial scouting party that we lost contact with. The map was fairly small but wide enough that it felt like there was enough to explore, and it was a fairly standard affair of capturing an initial control point, creating a base camp to recruit new units from, and expanding further into the map to capture more points for more resources, for more units and upgrades. This felt very much like it was an early, more tutorial based mission, which is just fine and was a good intro to the game, so no complaints here. It took me around 20 minutes to leisurely make my way through, an often reasonable challenge without being too crazy, so a decent normal difficulty to build up from. Once the entire map had been explored and captives released, there was something of a boss battle against Merkfang and his forces before he makes his getaway, likely progressing the story in the final game. I'll come back to the story later on, but if you guys know me, you know that I'm not massively into the lore, so gameplay is the most important thing for me. The second mission is against the aforementioned Nighthaunt. Our heroes stumbled across an artifact held in place by Shaishan chains, and we're tasked with capturing each of the 3 key locations on the map to loosen said chains and take the artifact for ourselves. This mission was far more challenging since we start in the middle of the map with enemies in basically every direction. We did have our base camp set up, but aside from that, nothing else, so resources are slim and expansion is hard fought. It took me quite a while, but eventually I was able to push through the map and take each of the locations to loosen the chains and defend against the hordes of enemies the game kept sending at me. Overall, both pretty fun missions. The second one was far more challenging, which I think is fine. In a linear single player game like this, I don't mind having to work for my victory, as the game would last about 15 seconds flat otherwise. The story so far seems fine. Like I said, I'm no lore guy, so I can't speak to how accurate it is, but it's Age of Sigmar, so high fantasy, it's decently voice acted, and it's interesting enough to keep me interested, at least in what I played, which was totally out of order, so no complaints here. One last thing that they've really improved on since the last preview is the control scheme. Last time it was a very classic RTS control scheme with WASD controlling abilities and arrow keys being used for movement. This time it was a more modernized scheme with the typical WASD movement and abilities instead being bound to surrounding keys like Q and C, etc. I still accidentally hit retreat a bunch of times, but you can put that down to me being a moron more than the controls. It's worth mentioning, by the way, that last time we played this, most of the feedback that was given was the controls not being the best, and in the very next preview, they've addressed it. If that doesn't stink of a dev that cares and listens to its playbase, then I don't know what does. If I had to guess what the plan is for launch, I would guess that one of 2 things will happen. The game will either launch with 2 control scheme options for classic and modern, but I literally have no basis for this, so it might just be modern, with the option to rebind if you want, like any good PC game. I'd also like to talk about the new faction, but since I didn't get to play as them, it's a little hard to know what their roster is like and how strong they are. They seem to be similar to Siege in Warhammer 3, where they have the barrier to protect against initial damage before taking hits to their actual HP, which is pretty neat. They also have these 4 bars beneath their HP. I didn't actually know what these did, so I reached out to Frontier to clarify, and they immediately came back with an answer because they are big, beautiful chats. It's the stacking buff created when multiple Nighthaunt units are close to each other, incentivizing you to blitz enemies all at once and give your units the highest stats that you can. I believe we've still got one more faction to come, and given the way that AOS divides up its factions, it's going to be Chaos, but that still leaves us with a huge list of options. Now I doubt they'd go for a single branch of Chaos, so that leaves either Undivided, aka Slaves to Darkness, Beastmen, or Skaven. Honestly, I'm not sure who is the most likely, but I think that I would for sure prefer Divided, because the one thing that the game is missing so far is demons, and that would really complete the look. But let me know in the comments who you think and who you want it to be. And honestly, I think that just about covers basically everything new. The game still looks great visually, has a very distinct style that spreads the high fantasy audio and super dramatic voice acting, and I'm still enjoying my time with the game, and while I probably aren't the most competitive multiplayer person out there, I can at least appreciate what they're trying to go for. And when I say competitive multiplayer, I don't mean like the Overwatch League where they're going to overinvest and then can the game within a year, more so that they want the multiplayer to keep the game alive for quite a while, draw players in, and provide the tools for great online battling versus other players. The story mode will be there to get you acquainted with the game, tell you how to play it, tell you a cool story in the process, but the multiplayer is where they're expecting people to spend all their real time with the game. Whether that'll pan out, only time will tell. All I know so far is that I've enjoyed my time with Realms of Ruin, and I'm looking forward to what they showcase next. I don't know about you guys, but personally, if you've ever played Star Wars Empire at War back in the day, they had this Galactic Conquest, I think the game mode was called, and you basically had to take over the entire map. You could build up different planets, although I guess it's just have to be a basis, and you should know it's Age of Sigmar, it's not 40k. And then you just go around invading different places, doing land battles, and it adds a bit more replayability to the single player side of things. If you're not into multiplayer, I think that'd be a really great addition. If not on launch, then at some point in the future. One thing that was also announced during this event that I didn't even pick up on is that the release date, 17th of November, so pretty close to being a birthday present for me. I'll take it. And that is everything that I have for you today on Realms of Ruin. Let me know in the comments what you're thinking of the game so far. Like, subscribe, and if you want more Realms of Ruin content, then why not check out this video on the multiplayer showcase. Spoilers, I dominated.